Behind every legendary masterpiece lies a messy, chaotic, and often hidden life. Welcome to Stories. Today, we are diving into the fragile yet fiercely rebellious world of a true piano poet, Frédéric Chopin. Yes, the genius behind the most heart-wrenching nocturnes and polonaises. But what lies beneath those delicate, ethereal notes? A scandalous, gender-defying love affair, a mysterious illness that still divides the medical world, exile, and a punishing winter in an abandoned monastery that nearly killed them both. If you're ready, let's dive straight into the drama. The year is 1810, in the village of Zelazowa Wola, Poland. Young Frédéric was born in the shadow of an aristocratic manor rather than an ordinary home. His father, Nicolas Chopin, was a French-born teacher and intellectual who had immigrated to Poland, teaching French language and literature to the children of Warsaw's upper class, while holding a respected position in academic circles. His mother, Justyna Trzcianowska, was the daughter of a noble yet impoverished Polish family. She was an elegant woman of deep culture who kept the patriotic Polish spirit and music alive in the home. Chopin's childhood was filled with intellectual debates, books, and groundbreaking areas. Their home was always a gathering place for aristocrats, artists, and academics. Even before he could walk properly, little Frédéric would hide beneath the piano keys of his mother's playing, showing an extraordinary sensitivity to notes. By the age of 6, he had begun playing pieces by ear flawlessly. At 7, his first official composition, a polonaise, was committed to paper. The person who first recognized his musical genius and tutored him was Wojciech Ziuni, a Polish musician and composer who co-founded the Warsaw Conservatory. Ziuni recognized little Frédéric's talent so early that he soon declared he had nothing left to teach him, leaving the boy to his own devices, because the child prodigy had already far surpassed his teacher's technical limits. In the following years, he studied counterpoint and composition at the Warsaw Conservatory. However, behind this genius lay that fragile, sickly constitution that would plague him for the rest of his life. He endured a childhood of constant coughing, frail health, and physical weakness far beyond his peers. It was November 1830. Chopin had set out for Vienna to shape his future and make a name for himself internationally. No sooner had he left Warsaw than news arrived that shattered his world. The November Uprising had broken out. Polish patriots had revolted against the occupation of the Russian Empire. Borders were suddenly closed. The streets of Warsaw ran red with blood, and it became impossible for Chopin to return to his homeland. Overnight, he was transformed into a refugee, a landless exile who had lost his country. When the foreign and cold atmosphere of Vienna began to suffocate him, he decided to go to Paris, the center of art, intellectual freedom, and revolution. Arriving in Paris in the autumn of 1831 with only a few coins in his pocket, a chronic cough in his chest, and deep melancholy in his heart from homesickness, Chopin quickly became the darling of high society salons with a piano style that hypnotized the aristocracy. Yet beneath the glittering chandeliers, Paris was a trap of rigid rules, fake smiles, and vicious backstabbing. Chopin hated public concert halls. His preference was for the intimate candle-lit drawing rooms of the elite, pushing his failing lungs with a relentless ambition to feed his perfectionism. Parisian high society salons were in a frenzy. While Chopin was the delicate, flawless prince of aristocratic salons, the earthquake caused by the woman he met one evening turned all balances upside down. The person before him was Aurore Dupin, better known by her male pseudonym George Sand, a writer who wore men's trousers, puffed on cigars in the middle of the street, rejected her own surname, and was the most widely read and hated author of the era. A mother of 2 who had fought and won a legal battle to divorce her husband, Sand was like a dagger driven straight into the heart of Victorian European morality. At first, Chopin hated this woman. He found Sand extremely loud, crude, and unrefined. Sand initially found this pale, overly meticulous musician arrogant and affected. Yet this clash quickly transformed into a dangerous, passionate, and sickly romance. Parisian gossip salons talked of nothing else. How could a delicate, sickly aristocratic artist and a scandal queen who lived like a man come together? Society whispered behind their backs, broadcasting the immorality and scandals of this relationship in the headlines. Seeking a warm climate to save Chopin's worsening lungs, the couple fled to the remote Spanish island of Mallorca. Everything started like a romantic dream. but quickly spiraled into a gothic horror story. The locals discovered they were living together without being married, viewed them as sinful outcasts, and turned completely hostile, refusing them food, shelter, and medical help. Trapped in a freezing, abandoned Carthusian monastery in Valdemasa during an unrelenting winter storm, Chopin's health completely collapsed. Coughing up blood, shivering in the damp cold, and tormented by terrifying hallucinations, he somehow composed his immortal preludes, including the famous Raindrop Prelude, written to the relentless, maddening sound of water dripping onto stone. Surviving Mallorca, they returned to France and spent years alternating between Paris and Sand's peaceful country estate in Nohant. But the relationship began to rot from the inside out. The problem wasn't just their personal character clashes, but Sand's children, Maurice and Solange. Sand's children waged an outright psychological war against Chopin. Her son Maurice grew jealous of his mother, treating Chopin as a degraded and foreign figure in the house, while constantly stirring up trouble. Her daughter Solange was a complete agent of chaos, masterfully manipulating this toxic power balance within the household for her own gain. Chopin was crushed between these poisonous family dynamics, having to endure endless domestic intrigues while battling tuberculosis. Sand, caught between her roles as a mother and a creative writer, found herself trapped between two fires and grew exhausted by Chopin's constant, high-maintenance sensitivity. The death warrant for the relationship was written during the wedding of Sand's daughter Solange. In a massive family argument that broke out, Chopin appeared to take Solange's side or challenged Sand's maternal authority. This completely unleashed all the pent-up anger inside George Sand. In a single stroke, she ripped the man she had protected and cared for up until then completely out of her life. In cruel letters to her inner circle, Sand wrote that she no longer loved him and regarded him as a capricious child she had been forced to nurse, ending this massive romance unilaterally. When they crossed paths by chance in the Paris streets a few years later, George Sand walked right past him without even looking at his face, while Chopin completely collapsed under this final blow. October 1849, Paris. Broken in body and spirit, he drew his final breath at just 39 years old. While official records and period doctors listed tuberculosis as the cause of death, modern medical science continues to debate whether he actually died from cystic fibrosis or a similar genetic respiratory illness due to the chronic respiratory failure and digestive issues he suffered since childhood. In accordance with his dying wish, his body was buried in Paris, but his heart was smuggled across Europe inside a jar of cognac to finally return to his beloved Poland. The world had lost a fragile genius, but left behind a legacy of eternal, haunting melodies born from absolute agony. Thank you for joining Stories. See you in new stories. Goodbye.